Hello there dudes, welcome back. This is part 4 of the JavaScript Jumpstart series. We're going to be talking about functions. I'm going to show you some cool stuff, some things we can do with those. Let's get stuck in. I'm just going to type in some of the basic code that we started off with for the last 3 tutorials. So now I'm just going to add some styling, which is the same as what we used in the first 3 tutorials, just to give the header and the paragraph some colour. So now I'm going to quickly type in the header element and the 3 paragraphs that we're going to be starting off with. And now at this stage, because we're going to be creating a function, we need to use the onClick attribute. And now if we save this, we should see something appear on screen. So I'm just going to click save now. So the first thing I'm going to do though is just quickly add in those 2 lines of JavaScript that we used in the first 3 tutorials, just as a quick refresher so we can see how it modifies the paragraph text. You'll remember this if you've seen the previous tutorial, so this is nothing new so far. And so now when we save this, we should see line 1 be replaced with experimenting with functions, and we should see the header tag, which is the first thing that we're changing there, with the plus equals operator, with experimenting with functions added on to the end of learning JavaScript. So I'm just going to click save now. That didn't work. Why didn't that work? We've got an error. Cannot read properties of null reading in HTML. I've spelt the ID wrong in the header. That looks better. I'm going to click save now. There we go. So that's working correctly. Now we're going to move on to what this tutorial is all about. So let's get stuck in and create our first function. But before we do that, we just need to do what we did in the previous tutorial, which is to return each of the 3 paragraphs into a variable. So that's just the 3 paragraphs being returned by the getElementById function and being placed into their own variable. So nothing new yet, but now we're going to create our very first function. First thing I want to do, because we're going to be changing the first line of text, and so when we hover the mouse over the first line of text, I want it to turn into one of those pointers rather than just the normal cursor. So as I'm moving the pointer over line 1 now, you can see nothing happens, which is the cursor property of the element that we need to change. And we change that to pointer. Now, when I click save, we should see the cursor change into a hand when I move it over there. And it's not doing. And we've not got an error in the console window. Just click save again. No. Let me just check in my other window. It works in the other windows. I've actually got a copy of what we're looking at within Visual Studio Code open in the browser. You can see that's exactly it's the same there. Click on elements, you'll see. And when I hover over, we're getting a hand. See the hand appearing. So why is the hand appearing in the browser version but not appearing in this one? Possibly just a fault with VS Code? No idea. But we know it's working anyway, that's the main thing. So let's now create the function. To declare a function, we use the function keyword followed by the function name. So we can choose any name you want. I'm just going to choose my function. And we use an opening and closing bracket at the end of the function name. And then we need to decide what we want to happen when the function is called. We call the function by function name, so if you look at the onClick attribute within the HTML just here, you can see that we're telling it to call the my function that we're just now creating, and therefore when we call functions we call them by name. So within JavaScript we've got the function keyword, the function name, then we need to put what we want to happen in the body of the function, and we're going to use an if statement, which is from, I think we did logic in the last tutorial, the third one, so we're going to do the conditional logic, that is. So we'll create an if statement, and we will say if the colour is already of a certain colour, then we're going to change it to a different colour, else we're going to change it back. So we should be able to toggle between colours by using an if else statement, so that when we click on line 1 it toggles between the two different colours. So that's the strict operator. I didn't mention this before. In C++ we have just equal to, so just two equal signs. In JavaScript we have 3. You can just use 2, but it's better to use 3 unless you've got a good reason just for using 2, is what most people are saying. It checks the values are the same, and it also checks the type. Because we don't specify types ourselves, and because JavaScript changes the type or converts to the type as it sees fit, unlike other languages where we specifically declare an integer or a float or a string object, and we don't do that in JavaScript. And so we need to be more careful that when we're comparing values, they're not just the same as it looks to read, but they are actually of the same type. So we don't want to compare the number 1 in a string with a number 1 as an integer, and to get them equating to be true, so what we're saying there is when we click on the paragraph, the first paragraph just there, so when we click on this first paragraph, the onClick attribute is going to make it call my function that we've just created. The first thing my function is going to do is ask the question, is line 1's colour equal to green? If it is equals to green, it's going to change it to blue. And we know that it's not equals to green because it's actually some other colour at the moment and it's not green. So that won't do anything at the moment, but what we're going to do now is add the else statement. And within the else statement, we're going to change it to a different colour. So let's do that now. And we'll also change the font type as well, just to make it a bit more interesting. So when I said we were going to change it to another colour, we're going to change it to the colour that is being checked within the if statement. So if it's green, we're going to change it to blue. If it isn't green, we're going to change it to green. And then we're also going to change the font family to impact. Now that means that on the second click, so if we click it first of all, it should change to green because it's not green to start with. But then it will be green, obviously. And then when we click it again, it will be green and it will change it to blue, but the font will stay the same. We could change the font back if we wanted to. So I'm just going to click save on that now and nothing will happen. I know we can't see the hand. There we go. So we've changed the colour, and we can see also over on the right hand side, if we look within the I'll just drag this window over. If we look within the elements within the DevTools window, we can see that we've got the inline style there saying cursor pointer, color green, font family, impact. Let's just click on the element again, and we can see that the color has changed to blue in the DevTools window. Let's just add another font so we can see it changing between fonts. Let's change that to, I don't know any cool fonts. Let's just change it back to Arial and click save, and we can see it's changed back. Just give us a bit more view on the window. So we can see now that we've got the style pointer cursor. We can't see, let's just click on the So we can, yeah, there we go. I needed to click on it to refresh it. So we can see the font family Arial, font family Impact, and we can see the color changing. So that's the function call, and obviously we're looking at the DOM over here on the right, so we're seeing it change. Just to prove to you that this cursor property of the element is working. Yeah, I'm just going to quickly show you again on this window. This is the identical window that I've got open on the other monitor. So as we're clicking it, same result as I've just shown you, but you can see there that the hand pointer is definitely working. So I don't know if that's a bug with VS Code. I've got no idea why that isn't working, but it works when we click it. There we go. So the next thing we're going to do is create our second function. This one is going to be a timer to make things happen at a regular interval, and this is where it starts to get even more fun. So let's just do that now. We'll call it my function 2, and we're going to need to create a count variable. I'll do that now. I'll just quickly type out the body of the function, and then I'll explain it line by line once I've done that. To go through this line by line then, we've got setInterval, which is a function call in JavaScript which basically acts as a timer. So the magic of the timer function really all stems from setInterval. Within the setInterval function call, we pass as arguments the function name that you want to be called on a regular basis, and then the time in milliseconds, so 300, and we assign it to a variable name, the handle that setInterval returns, and we can use that handle to cancel the timer at any point in the program. So we start by changing the text by accessing the inner HTML property of line 2 to display count and then the count value. Then we increase the count variable by 1 every time my function 2 is called. So every 300 milliseconds count is going to be incremented. We then check to see if count is greater than 10. And then to stop the timer, all we need to do is call the clearInterval function, and we pass the timer handle that I just mentioned. So this is the clearInterval function, and we pass the timer handle, which we've just set just here. And then we also want to update line 3's inner HTML to tell us that the timer's stopped, and then we set it to the color red. If I click save now, hopefully this will work. So I'm going to do that now. And we can see it working, and it stops. Let's just do that again. It's gone to green, counts to 10, and then it stops. How cool is that? The next thing I want to show you is that functions can receive values when we call the function. Just here, for example, my function 2, we've got the parentheses. You'll see that there's nothing in there. My function 2 is being called from the setInterval function call that we just made, and we're not passing anything to my function 2. And so now I'll show you an example of passing a variable to a function when we call the function. And I'm just going to change the heading so that it calls the new function. To do that, we need to add an onClick to the h1 tag. And let's also add another line of text. And then we've got to call the getElementById function again. That needs to be my function 3, is that correct? Yeah. So we're calling my function 3 and we're passing the string name coffee. which is received in this variable name. You don't need to, for example, you don't need to do that when you declare a variable inside a function parameter list. You just put the name of the variable. It's even a syntax error, so we'll delete the let keyword. That means it's going to receive coffee. Therefore, line 4, we're modifying the text to say value passed to my function 3 from the page heading equals, and then it should add coffee onto the end of it. And then we're also going to change it to orange. I also want to change that to a pointer like we did before. Let's do that. I'm not going to bother assigning a variable because we've only accessed the header just the once at the top. Just there. I'm just going to do the same again. And we're changing, just like for the line above, the style, the cursor property being set to pointer. If you remember from before, this doesn't work. And so, me being fussy, I need to show you it working. There you go, it does work. This is using live server, so whenever I click save within VS Code, this automatically updates. In fact, I can just show you that. If I mess with the heading just there, and I click save now, you'll see that it's just changed in there. I'll delete it again and click save. You'll see that it's gone. So this is my backup screen on the other monitor, and nearly forgot to show you. Look, you can see the hand is working just there, and I click that, and then we get the message. I'll do that on the other window. So if we click this, we get the message: value passed to my function 3 from the page heading equals coffee. So that works. I just want to show you how we can then chain this. In other words, the sum value that my function 3 is receiving, we can then pass that on to another function. I'll show you what I mean. And then we need to call my function 4 from my function 3, and we'll pass as an argument the same variable that my function 3 receives when we call it by clicking on the heading. I'll just put that on a separate line, make it a bit clearer to see. My function 3 is going to do what we've just seen it do, and then it's going to call my function 4, passing some value. My function 4 is going to receive that value under a different name, but it's the same value. It's then going to, on a new line, display this message, and on the end of the message string that we're adding in between the quotes, it's going to add the word coffee on the end. So I'm just going to click save now, and we need to click on the heading. Why isn't that working? Error at my function 3. Unbelievable. Let's try again. There we go. So that's cool, and there's just one last thing I want to show you. This is important because it's about anonymous functions. I find this strange. A function without a name. So here's a great example. We'll call the console log function again. I'm not going to add any more HTML elements. And that brings us to the next JavaScript function that I need to show you, which is the set timeout function. And what this does is it calls the function just the one time rather than at regular intervals like the set interval function. So that line there is going to call the console message function that we've just defined here, and it's going to do that after 1.5 seconds, 1500 milliseconds, and then that's going to be it. It's not going to do anything again, so it's just going to get called the one time. I'm going to click save, look over in the console window on the right, and you'll see that appear in 1.5 seconds starting from now. There we go. This is the point of anonymous functions, what I'm going to show you next. This function exists by a function name, which means we can call it as many times as we want at any point in the program, and yet it's something that we only intend to run just the once. Therefore, we can use an anonymous function like this. And now I'm going to run this first, and then I'll just explain a little bit about what's going on within this set timeout function just here, this anonymous function. So let's click save. There we go. Both messages have displayed as we expected. What I'm going to do now is just expand the syntax so that it's a bit more spread out, just so we can see more clearly the equivalence between the two. And now we can see that it makes more sense. I think this is clearer to see it this way. The first argument within the first set timeout function, we can see that it's this function name. And this anonymous function, which is the first argument for this second set timeout function call, is exactly equivalent to this named function. We call it anonymous just because it's not got a name. And there you can see, they're exactly equivalent to each other. And it's a good example, I think, of when we would want to use an anonymous function. If the message or whatever the code is only intended to be executed just one time, it doesn't really make any sense to give it a function name if we don't need to. And we don't need to in JavaScript. And so that's everything for this tutorial. Hopefully you found that fun. The next tutorial will be even more fun because we're going to be making an actual maths quiz game. Don't forget to subscribe if you've liked this. I'd love to see you in the next tutorial. And that's everything for now. So cheers, I'll see you later.